Make sure you scrub the grease off my Tesla's rims before the guests arrive tomorrow, Valerie. It's the only thing you're actually qualified for anyway. Julian sneered, his voice dripping with the kind of entitlement that only 34 years of being the golden child could produce. I looked down at the gift my mother had just handed me. It wasn't a piece of jewelry or a stock option or even a simple sweater. It was a heavy-duty, industrial-grade cleaning apron. Beside me, my 7-year-old son Oliver was holding a set of toilet brushes from his own gift box. "Every dynasty needs its laborers, darling," my mother, Eleanor, said with a smile that didn't reach her cold, blue eyes. She patted Julian's hand as he played with his new $4,500 professional racing drone. "Julian is the architect of our family's future. You and your children, you are the caretakers of his legacy. Better they learn their place early." The air in the room felt like it had been replaced with dry ice. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply took the brushes from Oliver's trembling hands, placed them neatly inside the apron, and walked to the kitchen trash can. Clang. The sound of the lid closing was the final heartbeat of my relationship with this family. "We're leaving," I whispered to Oliver and 5-year-old Sophie. The drive back to our small apartment in San Jose was silent. I watched my children in the rearview mirror. They were confused, hurt, and quiet. Too quiet for children their age. That was the moment my sadness turned into a cold, hard diamond of rage. For 5 years, I had been the ghost behind Julian's success. I was the one who wrote the code for Project Aegis, a biometric security system worth $15 million. I was the one who pulled 18-hour shifts while my brother took the credit at country clubs. I had even given them $120,000 of my own hard-earned savings when the firm struggled, only to watch Julian buy a luxury SUV a month later. I was the insurance policy. He was the investment. When we got home, I tucked the kids in and went straight to my workstation. I logged into the secure server of Miller Tech Solutions. My plan was to revoke their access to my latest update, but as the terminal window flickered to life, my blood turned to vinegar. The access logs were moving in real time. Admin_Julian is moving directory /project_Aegis/core_algorithm. He wasn't just looking at it. He was migrating the entire project to a private, external server. Access denied. Credentials scrubbed. User Valerie_M marked as terminated. Cause breach of contract. The bastard had done it. He hadn't just stolen the work. He had erased my existence from the company records. He had fired me on Thanksgiving night after handing my son a toilet brush. A notification popped up on my phone. It was a text from Julian, a photo of him holding a glass of $500 scotch, grinning. "Thanks for the heavy lifting, Val. I've updated the metadata. My name is on every line of code now. Don't bother coming to the Silicon Valley Summit on Tuesday. Security has a photo of you. Stick to the kitchen. It suits you better." I stared at the screen until the words blurred into red streaks. He thought he was a genius because he knew how to change a password. He thought he had stolen the crown jewels. What Julian and my parents forgot was that I didn't just build the house. I laid the traps in the foundation. Hidden deep within the biometric encryption layer of Project Aegis was a logic bomb I had written years ago as a just-in-case measure. It was a digital watermark that acted as a kill switch. "You want a servant, Julian?" I whispered into the darkness of my office. "Fine. I'm coming to clean up your mess. And I'm starting with you." "You're not actually going, are you?" "Mom, that man said he'd call the cops if he saw us near the office again," Sophie whispered. At 7 years old, my daughter was already too observant, her eyes reflecting the blue glow of my monitors. "I'm not going to the office, Sophie," I said, my voice low as I typed a final string of commands. I'm going to the Silicon Valley Tech Summit, and I'm not going as an employee. I'm going as a ghost. The weekend was a blur of caffeine and cold fury, while Julian was likely celebrating at some high-end bar, bragging about his breakthrough in biometric AI. I was digging through the back doors I had built years ago. Arthur, my father, had always said that a woman's touch was best suited for the soft side of the business, aesthetics, and making sure the coffee machine was stocked. He never realized that while I was making the office look pretty, I was weaving a spider web into the very servers that held the family's wealth. "Valerie, stop this nonsense." My mother's voice rang through the phone on Sunday evening. She didn't even ask how the kids were after the humiliating Thanksgiving dinner. "Julian told us you tried to hack the company server. After everything we've done for you, we gave you a job when no one else would. You gave me a desk and took $120,000 of my savings to cover Julian's gambling debts, Eleanor," I retorted, the heat in my chest flaring. "I didn't hack anything. I was looking for my property." "It's the family's property. Everything you create belongs to the Miller name. Julian is the face of that name. Now be a good girl and stay home. If you make a scene at the summit, your father will ensure you never work in this industry again. He'll take the condo back, Valerie. Think about your children." The line went dead. The threat was clear: submission or homelessness. I looked at the $4,500 drone Julian had been gloating over. He had left the box at the house in his haste, but I had the controller. I'd borrowed it in the chaos of leaving. I spent the night recoding its firmware. If Julian wanted to play with toys, I'd give him one he'd never forget. By Monday night, I had it. The $15 million contract with Global Tech Solutions was the only thing keeping Miller Tech Solutions afloat. My father had leveraged every asset, including the equity in my own home, using a power of attorney I'd foolishly signed years ago to fund the final phase. "They didn't just steal my work," I muttered to the empty room. "They bet my life on it." I pulled up the project files for Aegis. On the surface, it was a flawless biometric gatekeeper, but buried in the subroutines of the facial recognition engine was a dead man's switch. I had coded it to look for a specific sequence of encrypted pings. If the system didn't receive a handshake from my personal device during a live demonstration, it wouldn't just stop working. It would reveal the truth. I had embedded thousands of hidden watermarks into the source code. Every time the AI processed a face, it would flicker a microscopic frame onto the screen, a frame that contained my digital signature and the original timestamps of my work. Tuesday morning arrived, cold and sharp. I dressed in a sharp charcoal blazer. I looked at my reflection, the dark circles under my eyes, the set of my jaw, the absolute lack of fear. I arrived at the convention center 30 minutes before Julian's keynote. As I approached the VIP entrance, I saw the security guards holding tablets. My face popped up on their screens with a bright red border. Access denied. Julian had been thorough. He was standing near the entrance, surrounded by my parents and a group of investors. He saw me and walked over to the security line, leaning against the velvet rope. "I told you, Val," he whispered, loud enough for our parents to hear. "The kitchen is in the other direction. You're just the help we let go." "Julian," I said, my voice dangerously calm, "this is your last chance. Admit I authored the algorithm. Give me back my savings and I won't do this." He laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "Co-author? You're a decorator, sis. Get out before I have these gentlemen drag you out." My father stepped forward, his face flushed. "Go home, Valerie. Don't ruin your brother's day." They turned their backs on me. I didn't leave. I stepped back into the crowd and pulled out my phone. I had one contact Julian didn't know I had. Marcus Vane, the CEO of the rival firm. "I'm in the lobby," I texted. "I have the proof of theft. Want to see the Miller legacy crumble?" 5 seconds later, a reply came. "Elevator B, floor 4. I'll have a badge waiting." "I've spent 3 years trying to out-engineer your brother, Valerie. I never realized I was actually losing to you," Marcus Vane said, his voice a low gravel as he handed me a gold-rimmed consultant badge. We were standing in the service elevator of the San Jose Convention Center. Marcus was the antithesis of my brother. Sharp, understated, and terrifyingly intelligent. He had been the primary rival for the $15 million global tech contract, and until 5 minutes ago, he thought he had lost to a superior mind. "You weren't losing to a mind, Marcus. You were losing to a ghost," I replied, pinning the badge to my charcoal blazer. My hands weren't shaking anymore. The cold rage had reached its boiling point and turned into a singular, icy focus. "Julian couldn't code a basic Hello World program without a tutorial. He's been feeding you my algorithms for years. And now he's about to sell them to the highest bidder," Marcus noted, checking his watch. "The presentation starts in 10 minutes. My legal team is on standby, but we need more than just your word. We need a smoking gun." "I'm not giving you a smoking gun, Marcus. I'm giving you the entire firing squad." We stepped out into the 4th floor, overlooking the grand auditorium. Below, the room was packed with 500 of the most influential people in tech. In the front row, I could see my parents, Arthur and Eleanor, sitting like royalty. They were beaming, shaking hands with billionaires, basking in the reflected glory of their son's theft. Down on the stage, the lights dimmed. A sleek, silver podium rose from the floor. Julian stepped into the spotlight, looking every bit the Silicon Valley visionary. The crowd erupted in applause. "Thank you," Julian said, his voice projected through the massive speaker system. 3 years ago, I sat in my office and asked myself, can we create a security system that doesn't just watch, but understands? Today, Miller Tech Solutions gives you the answer. Project Aegis. He gestured to the 20-foot LED wall behind him. A stunning 3D rendering of a digital fortress appeared. "This isn't just code," Julian continued, his tone becoming theatrical. "It's my life's work. I've spent countless nights, sacrificed everything, to ensure this technology protects our future." I felt a surge of nausea. My nights, my sacrifices. The nights I spent working with a fever, while Sophie slept in a playpen next to my desk. The $120,000 I gave him to save the company while he was buying designer watches. "Watch this," I whispered, my thumb hovering over the execute button on my phone. On stage, Julian reached the climax. "Now, for the live demonstration. Aegis will scan this room, identifying every VIP guest and cross-referencing credentials in under 2 seconds. Julian tapped the tablet. A blue laser-like grid began to sweep across the audience. The LED wall showed a live feed of the crowd, with green boxes snapping onto faces. "It's flawless," the lead investor from Global Tech murmured. Julian's grin was blinding. He looked toward our parents and gave a subtle thumbs up. "Julian?" I whispered to the empty air. "You should have stayed in the kitchen." I tapped the screen. Command. Handshake, _ Request, _ Denied. Trigger. Dead _ Man, _ Switch, _ Active. On the stage, the smooth blue grid suddenly flickered. A sharp, digital screech echoed through the auditorium. The green boxes on the screen turned a violent, pulsing crimson. Julian's smile faltered. He tapped the tablet frantically. Just a minor synchronization lag, folks. But the LED wall began to strobe. Every face in the audience was now being overlaid with translucent red text flashing at a high frequency. Authorship verification failed. Original signature detected, Valerie Miller. Timestamp, October 14th, 2023, 03:14 a.m. "What is this?" a voice shouted. Julian was sweating, his face pale under the stage lights. It's a hack." It's not a hack, Julian," I said softly, my phone patched into the audio feed. My voice, calm, cold, and clear, boomed through the auditorium. "The system is simply telling the truth, Julian. You can't steal a soul and expect the body to keep working." The room went deathly silent. Every eye turned to the screen, where my original hand-signed design schematics began to overwrite his presentation. Julian looked up at the balcony, his eyes finding mine. For the first time in his life, he looked small. The silence in the auditorium was heavier than the applause that had preceded it. It was the kind of silence that precedes a landslide. On the massive LED wall, my original sketches, complete with my coffee-stained margins and handwritten notes, replaced the sleek corporate slides. The name Valerie Miller was burned into the center of the screen in glowing red pixels. "Security! Shut it down, now!" Julian screamed, his voice cracking. He looked like a cornered animal, his $3,000 suit suddenly looking 2 sizes too big. But the Aegis system wasn't responding to his touch. I had locked the administrative kernel. The only way to stop the display was to cut the power to the entire building, and by then, the damage would be permanent. In the front row, the transformation of my parents was a sight I would cherish for the rest of my life. Eleanor's silk handkerchief was no longer dabbing tears of pride. She was clutching it to her mouth in horror. Arthur, the great patriarch, looked as though he had aged 20 years in 20 seconds. He stared at the screen, then at his son, then up toward the balcony where I stood. "Is this a joke, Miller?" The lead investor from Global Tech stood up, his face a mask of fury. "You're pitching us a $15 million security system that can't even secure its own source code? Or is the screen right? Did you steal this from your sister?" "No, she's mentally unstable," Julian stammered, pointing a shaking finger toward the balcony. "She's a disgruntled ex-employee. This is a sophisticated deepfake." "A deepfake with timestamps from 3 years ago?" Marcus Vane stepped forward into the balcony light, his presence adding a crushing weight to the room. He looked down at the board of investors. "Gentlemen, I am Marcus Vane of Vane Industries. I've just been handed the original encrypted repositories for this entire project. I can confirm that Julian Miller hasn't written a single line of this code. This is Valerie Miller's architecture." The auditorium erupted into chaos. Investors began walking out. Journalists, who had been invited to witness a tech revolution, were now frantically typing headlines about the Miller fraud. I turned and walked toward the exit of the balcony, Marcus following close behind. "The legal fallout will be spectacular," he noted. "They won't just lose the contract. They'll be sued into the Stone Age for intellectual property theft and fraud." "I don't care about the company anymore," I said, my heart pounding with a mixture of relief and lingering adrenaline. "I just want what's mine." As I reached the lobby, I was intercepted. My father was running toward me, his face a shade of purple that looked genuinely dangerous. He wasn't alone. Eleanor was behind him, her heels clicking aggressively on the marble floor. You've destroyed us, Arthur roared, his voice echoing through the glass lobby. He tried to grab my arm, but Marcus stepped between us like a wall of granite. Do you have any idea what you've done? That contract was our only hope. The bank is going to seize the firm by Friday. You destroyed yourself, Arthur, I said, refusing to call him father. The moment you handed my son a toilet brush while my brother stood on my hard work was the moment Miller Tech Solutions died. I just gave it the funeral it deserved. You're a monster, Eleanor hissed, her eyes wet with real tears this time. Tears for her lost status. We gave you everything. We gave you a home. You gave me a cage, I countered. And you used my $120,000 savings to gold-plate Julian's lifestyle. Speaking of money, I've already contacted my bank. Since you used a forged power of attorney to move my home equity into the company account, I filed a formal fraud report. The funds are being frozen as we speak. Arthur's face went pale. Valerie, listen to reason. We're family. If the company goes under, Julian could go to prison for the fraudulent filings. Is that what you want? To see your brother in a cell? I looked past him to where Julian was being escorted out of the auditorium by security, his head bowed, his visionary mask shattered. I thought about the cleaning apron. I thought about the years of being a ghost. I think he'll find that a prison cell is very easy to keep clean, I said coldly. He can use those brushes you gave Oliver. I'm sure he'll have plenty of time to practice. I walked past them, out into the bright Silicon Valley sun. My phone buzzed. A notification from my bank. Transfer initiated. $120,000. I wasn't just a ghost anymore. I was finally real. The aftermath was a symphony of falling glass. Within 48 hours, the Miller miracle had transformed into the tech industry's most toxic cautionary tale. I sat in a quiet, sun-drenched cafe 3 blocks from the courthouse, watching the news ticker on my tablet. Miller Tech Solutions files for Chapter 7, CEO Julian Miller, under investigation for grand larceny and securities fraud. The bell above the door chimed, and Arthur walked in. He looked like a man who had spent the last 2 nights sleeping in his car. The tailored suit was gone, replaced by a rumpled windbreaker. He sat across from me, his hands shaking as he reached for a glass of water. We lost the estate, Valerie, he said, his voice a hollowed-out version of the boom it used to be. The bank moved in this morning. Eleanor is staying at a motel. She hasn't stopped crying. I hope the motel is clean, I said, my voice devoid of empathy. I've heard she has very high standards for the help. Arthur winced. I know you're angry, but Julian is facing 10 to 15 years. The prosecutor said if you sign an affidavit stating the work was a joint venture, even if he was just the supervisor, the fraud charges might be dropped. We can still save him. I leaned forward, the steam from my tea rising between us. You're still doing it, Arthur. Even now, with the rubble of your life at your feet, you're trying to use me as a shield for him. Did you ask him to sign anything when he was stealing the equity out of my children's future? Did you cry for me when you handed Oliver a cleaning apron? He's your brother. He's a thief. And you were the fence. I pulled a thick envelope from my bag and slid it across the table. I'm not signing your affidavit, but I am offering you this. He opened the envelope with trembling fingers. His eyes widened. What is this? It's a check for $120,000, the exact amount I loaned the firm years ago. I successfully clawed it back from the frozen accounts this morning with Marcus Vane's legal team. I don't want it. Arthur looked at the check as if it were a miracle. You're saving us? No, I said, a sharp smile touching my lips. I'm buying the rest of my life. That money is the price for you, Eleanor and Julian, to never speak my name again. You will not call me. You will not visit my children. You will disappear. If I see even a shadow of a miller near my door, I will hand the federal investigators the secondary set of logs. The ones that prove you knew about the fraud from day one. Arthur's face went from relief to absolute terror. He realized then that I wasn't the insurance policy anymore. I was the beneficiary of their destruction. He stood up, clutching the check, and left without a word. An hour later, Marcus Vane joined me. He looked invigorated. The board approved the new contract, Valerie. $15 million for the Corps, but under a new name, the Valkyrie Protocol. And as the new CTO of Vane Industries, you get a $500,000 signing bonus. I have one condition, Marcus, I said. I want a corner office. I'm done being a ghost. I want everyone to hear me coming. That evening, I returned to my condo. Oliver and Sophie were in the living room, building a massive fortress out of Legos. They looked up and beamed. Did you win, Mom? Sophie asked. I dropped my keys on the counter, feeling the weight of the world finally lift. I did, I said, kissing her forehead. And from now on, the only thing we're cleaning in this house is a fresh start. I looked at the trash can where I had thrown that gray apron. It was gone, taken out with the rest of the garbage. I wasn't a servant. I was the architect of my own kingdom, and the foundation was unbreakable. Know your worth and keep your receipts. Don't let anyone, especially family, turn your loyalty into a doormat. If they treat you like the help, show them who actually owns the keys. Thanks for listening. If you loved seeing her take back the throne, smash that like button and drop a comment below. Subscribe for more savage stories coming your way.